are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Hey, what's happening? Urbanology.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the art of William Anthony Rogers. I hope that you all have taken advantage of early voting, and if you haven't, today is the day to go out and vote. You need not have to be told about the importance of voting, especially in the climate that we're in. And if you have not gone out to vote yet, please do so. And when you do, remember to flip the ballot. There is a number of amendments on the back of the ballot that's extremely important. And the first one deals with giving the state the opportunity to allocate funding for the development of a process that will guarantee clean air and clean water in the state. And no matter whether you're independent, Republican, or Democrat, you have to breathe and you have to drink water. So this should be a no-brainer for everyone to make sure that we approve that amendment. I have today as my guest a person who is no stranger to the Soul City Urbanology show. He's been on a number of times because of the important work that he always is doing. And he's a minister, he's a journalist, he's a speaker, he's an entrepreneur, world traveler, and he is again having a major 2-day event at the Brooklyn Navy Yard November 17th and 18th, talking about the economic development opportunities that are available to us as a people. And no matter who you may be, if you're looking for work, this may be a place that you might want to go to. And there's a number of major speakers that will take part in this event. And I would like now to bring on my good friend and a person who is always working to the betterment of the mind, body, and spirit of people, Reverend Reve Dillon.
Thank you so much. And Tony, I really want to salute you, sir. It's a pleasure to be with you. Pleasure always to be with you. I love the idea and the theme and the name of the show, Urbanology, and how important that is to our community and our people. And I'm glad you talked about everybody getting exposed to this. That is so key and so critical. The environmental referendum on the ballot, but also the other three referendums on the New York City ballot. That is really about the way.
And Reverend Dillon, could you turn your mic up just a bit because it's kind of hard to hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that any
Turn the
better?
mic. Uh, that
Yeah,
is better because you got a
sounds
lot
good.
to say. We want to make sure people hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
A lot of
absolutely.
important
So,
stuff to say.
thank you, sir. Thank you. So I'm making the point again about how important it is for the other three items, as well as the environmental referendum on the ballot around racial justice, racial equality in New York City. So flip the
Yeah.
ballot for that one on the environment, and again the other three. That is really about just racial equity in New York City. That's key. And again, everybody get to the polls and vote. So, Tony, thank you, sir. It's good to be with you.
Well, it's a pleasure. And one of the things we know that there's still a great deal of unemployment. And one of the things that I always think is worse than the fact that there's a great deal of unemployment is the fact that there are opportunities that many people just don't know about. And that's why I, I always support the insurgents conferences that you do, bringing leaders in the economic, political, and civic communities together to talk about these issues. And I know there's one coming up November the 17th and 18th. So I would like for you to talk to the listeners a little bit about that because there's still enough time, I'm sure, for them to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, we're in this post-pandemic America. And yes, there is much talk about the abundance of jobs that are available. Unfortunately, oftentimes in this urban context, a lot of these jobs do not work their way into our communities, or we probably do not even think sometimes that we can access them. So this conference is really about access. It's about the diversity of opportunities that are available for those looking for employment. I look at the categories in our community, and I talk about the unemployed, the underemployed, and in many cases the unemployable. And this provides just a platter. It provides a smorgasbord, if you will, of opportunities that are certainly available across the board, and access to employment, access to capital, to start your home-based business, or to expand your brick and mortar business, or any kind of enterprise that you might be, and all of these other key areas, access to government and corporate contracts. That's why there's so many government agencies that are coming to the table, corporations that are coming to the table. And again, we certainly want to invite every individual, if you're looking to start your own business, already in your own business, looking to become self-employed, and what are the options available around that. Certainly Resurgence 2022 conference provides opportunities in all these areas.
Well, I know you have a wonderful lineup. Of course, we have the mayor because he's a Brooklyn Knight, so I'm sure that he would
Yes,
have to
sir.
be there, even though during your other conferences, you always had mayors coming. So this is probably coming home from him. My colleague Lloyd Williams, the president of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, and President Vince Woodrow from City College. And I also see you have a an old friend. I haven't seen him in a while, George Frazier. He'll be talking about becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. And George Fraser, we've gone, we've been around together a long time. We've done a lot of work together. In 2019, he was on a tour of the continent of Africa with us. We've made many stops talking about how we really create what I want to call a Black/African economic renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
That's really something that we are deeply committed to. We think it is critical. Now, the fact that the African community, the Black community, whether we're talking about New York City and the New York tri-state area or across these United States of America, have endured the kind of disparities that have left us lagging behind almost everybody else economically. And I'm a strong believer that the path to true freedom is an economic path. It is not about social service programs, not to negate the importance of social service programs, but certainly as we move to a place of economic power, economic control, economic self-sufficiency in our own communities, we can really begin to take this greater journey to get to that place where we are truly economically free and economically empowered.
And as you know, I through the Harlem Tourism Board, there's a program that we have now, Awakening of the Sleeping Giant. That's the African diaspora, and we've been working very closely with Senegal and Ghana, and to a certain degree soon with Nigeria, to begin to also allow for individuals to know that there are opportunities in your homeland also that you should at least be aware of, because there's this thought that until the diaspora is awakened, Africa never not really be free, nor can we. But all of the resources, as you know, because you have a real close connection to South Africa, and have traveled, as you indicated, you know, most of the resources of the world are located in Africa. You know, the gold, the oils, the diamonds, the precious minerals, and the like. And everybody is going there except for us.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because it makes the point that Africa is a sleeping giant for us, particularly the Africans outside of the continent or the African diaspora, whether we're talking about African Americans or African Caribbeans or Afro Latinos, as the case might be. And the fact is that everybody else are there. When we look at Central Africa, the money's pulled out. When we, again, talking about just South Africa as an example, in 10 years, the landlords way back about 100 years ago, in 10 literal years, 100 years ago, pulled out over 100 billion pounds within a 10-mile radius in South Africa alone. I mean, so we're really talking about a sleeping giant here. And that's why one element of the conference, Tony, is really bringing together many from across the continent of Africa, business leaders. In fact, we've got a couple that are flying in, business leaders that are flying in from parts of Africa like Cote d'Ivoire and South Africa, Kenya, that are actually coming to this particular conference. Because, again, this is the time for the synchronization and the coordination of the African power, whether it is the resources that are based on the continent or it's the consumer power that's based in America, and how we fuse these together so that there can truly be the kind of economic African renaissance that we're talking about.
And I truly believe, Reverend Dillon, that you're always on the right track. But in this case, it's really um, um, uh, hitting the bullseye in some of the needs and information that needs to be given, because we sometimes, uh, as I travel and see what's going on in Africa, unfortunately, we only see the bad part. We don't see all of the progress and the things that are going. People are not living in huts anymore in the main, you know.
Mhm.
And what I truly believe is that we're reaching a time where the things that you offer, the information that you provide, sometimes may not be as focused by those who need it, because they, in many cases, have to understand who they are. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I started talking to people about is that we get caught up in African American or Caribbean American, but more so African American, because at least Caribbean American there has been some more history that you can point to. But as African American, if that's all that you're saying that you are, you only have 4 years of heritage. But if you are Caribbean or uh, uh, African American, and you say that you're an African, your your lineage goes back to the beginning of time, and there's a difference. There's definitely a difference than saying, "Hey, you know, my I can trace myself back to the slavery," which you can't do because they erased all the records. But to know that you have to travel there like you to understand civilization started in Africa.
Yeah.
Theoretically, we're all Africans, but nevertheless, that's a different perspective that allows for you, I believe, to take advantage more. Once you begin to understand who you are, it gives you more incentive to take advantage of the 2 days, especially these 2 days.
Yeah.
You understand that this is not a gift. This is something that in many cases, uh, they gave the Japanese, I think, 200,000 $2,000 a piece or something like that, based on their incarceration. There was the government paid because of the injustice that they received. We're still trying to get reparations. Look what happened to us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because as you're saying this, and this is so so key for us to understand that when we look at the historic disparities, when we look at the layers of injustices that Africans and blacks in America, blacks in the Americas, as I would rather say, have suffered and endured over the years. Oh, how critical and important, to your point, for us to learn how we need to come together more, find ourselves in the same room and in the same spaces more often, not just talking about these things, but certainly moving in an aggressive direction at solution. To your point again, yes, most times when we hear about Africa, we're hearing all the bad stuff, and the whole idea is to keep us on the
Away.
defensive and to keep us in a reactionary mode,
Mm-hmm.
while all of the other people, all of the other nations are now proactively moving into Africa as they are moving into African American, African Caribbean communities in the Americas for the very purpose of pulling out all the resources, because that sadly makes a lot of sense to them and for them. So I think it's key for this journey to take on a new spirit of revival. And as you talk about the sleeping giant, Africa as a sleeping giant, the other sleeping giant, I believe very strongly, is the Black church. And I believe that
Mm-hmm.
as the Black church as a sleeping giant wakes up and elevate our agenda beyond what I call the pie in the sky, meet me in the sweet by and by theology, and begin to focus more on the journey of empowerment, the journey of economic freedom and liberation. Take this beyond just political power into a place of economic control. I think we'll begin to see the shift and the changes that are necessary, not just to give Black people in America and the Americas a greater degree of freedom, but certainly it is the path for us to journey to free the continent of Africa.
And it's vice versa too, because the colonizer was effective in Africa also. Because just as we see them in a certain way, when I walk in Senegal, they think either I'm a basketball player, a sports athlete, or a rapper, or in the movies. Because from all that they see, they don't really understand that we're like them, which is the important thing that I see, to begin to have the people who are on the ground meet the people who are on the ground, not necessarily those who represent them, because many of them have been, trained and I guess you can say, not brainwashed, I would say, but in many cases colonized to think in a certain way like the colonizer. But you made a great point as relates to the church, because at one time that was the only thing that allowed for us to bring ourselves together. The foundation of most of the music, the singing, and some of the singing was used, as you know, wade in the waters, because the dogs can't catch you if you go into the water. So the songs are messages that allowed for us to go. But the only gathering that we were able to deal with was the church, which is why most of the resurgence and most of the information that came out, people, whether it was Nat Turner or Denmark, they were all focused on that concept. So you're absolutely right. That has been, even though the colonizer kind of changed it around to make him look better than us, but we were able to, with our creativity, and you're still doing it, use that as a way to provide that type of spiritual insight to keep us to understanding that we are somebody.
Very key. And for us, what's really key as we talk about the Resurgence Conference, and invite and encourage everyone to just go to the website resurgence2022.com and register to attend and to participate. Here's for us what some of the key elements are. It is, number one, understanding the power of the church coming together. You want to get elected, you find your way to the Black church. Almost everybody utilize the church to facilitate where they need to go, or what they need to accomplish, political power, political growth. Our conviction and commitment here is simply this, that the same way, and I don't want to get into deep history because of maybe the limited time we have, and the fact that some folks may only get part of the information and may walk away with the misunderstanding. But the fact of the matter, it was the European church that created and facilitated the colonization of Africa and the rest of the world.
Exactly.
It was the church in that context that created slavery. It was the church in that context that created and facilitated the development of major corporations that we have across the globe, particularly most of the older corporations that have facilitated most of the newer corporations. So our commitment is simply this, that the same way we've seen the white church created this economic mushrooming and revival among the European world, and we've seen this in other contexts as well, which we won't have time to talk about. I believe it is the same way that if we are, as Black people in the world, And Black people in America, if we are to rise to the level that we ought to rise to, we must begin to go back to the power of this ecclesia, the church, which really speaks of the gathering place. No place in America Black people gather more than in the church. It is simply that place where we come together, and from that foundation, from that coming together, from that ecclesia, which is the Greek word that means church, and is translated the gathering place. It is from this gathering and gathering place that now we begin to talk through the journey. How do we build cooperation? How do we create media empires and media giants so that at the end of the day, we're telling our own story and we are given the correct information contrary to the information that has given, that have facilitated the kind of mindset that we've walked away with. I think that's key and that's critical.
One of the things that I was just reading a comment from one of the people that I know that you know, Dr. Yana Woodhouse. She was the first Black woman to trade on Wall Street. She wanted to know, will there be a panel on financial literacy? Because one of the things, how money works, is something that we never really had a chance to deal with. And Dr. Woodhouse has received so many awards based on her understanding and
absolutely
an ability to begin to make that happen. Do you have any structures for the 2 days dealing with financial literacy?
And the answer is yes. Bear in mind that most of the conference is about finances. This is not a social program. It's not a social agenda conference, not to negate the importance of all these areas. So we have put this in the context of what we call the 8 doors of access. And within the 8 doors of access, number 1 is access to capital. Lots of information around that. In fact, we've got over 15 lenders, both conventional banks, what we would call micro lenders, even character-based lending, where small businesses or those who are looking to start businesses can get loans outside of the traditional underwriting criteria, with recommendation from their clergy leaders, recommendation from their elected leaders, and so forth. Then there's going to be access to wealth creation, wealth transfer, wealth management, money management. All of these are principles that will be taught at the conference. Another access door would be access to government and corporate contracts. How is it that Black businesses can access? Do you know, in New York City alone, there's about 3 or 4 corporations that are doing over $20 billion in business, in contracts with the city of New York. And it's a long list. And unfortunately, most times, we just don't have the same level of access. I was listening to Chancellor David Banks, who we know very well, served on our board at the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce for a while. And again, he's saying, wow, one of the things that I really want to do is to help members of our Black and Brown communities to gain access to these huge contracts that even the board of the Department of Education is issuing. So there's going to be that. So yes, there will be information all day long, both days, around financial literacy, money management, wealth creation, access to capital, access to franchising and dealership opportunities, another missing area. And again, Tony, you probably know this as well as I do, that years ago in New York City, we had about maybe 8 or 9 Black-owned dealerships, car dealerships in New York City alone. I think we probably have maybe 1 left, and maybe 1 or 2 in the New York, New Jersey area left. So it seems as if in a lot of ways we're reversing as opposed to going forward. And that's why this is called resurgence.
Right.
our commitment is to create a research, and that's why we certainly want to encourage everyone to register at resurgence2022.com and make your way to this conference.
And I'm glad that Dr. Woodhouse is listening, because I'm sure she would be a tremendous compliment to whatever panel, whatever you're doing there, based on her knowledge. So I'm happy to hear her be in this dialogue, as well as others, which is why we're having this dialogue to begin.
And I would absolutely love that. If I could just give her, and for everyone, my email address, publisher@nychristiantimes.com. Would love to follow up and see how we take it further. Just simply publisher@nychristiantimes.com.
And I'll make sure that to Matt, and I know Dr. Woodhouse, who's a close colleague. She went with us to Senegal to talk about financial literacy for women.
Absolutely.
And she has a book, How Money Works, So I'm sure that I'll have her connect with you. She would be great. But Christian Times, I know we're talking about the conference, and I know that that's important, but you're doing, and how you do, I guess God has his way of directing you, because I don't know how you do all of these things, but I know that there's a lot that you do with Christian Times, and I know that there are a lot of stuff that you're working on. Could you talk a little bit about the publication that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tony, I am with you. Sometimes I don't even know how all of this get done. I'm thinking I'm a full-time pastor, a full-time publisher, a writer. I'm traveling the continent, just doing the Lord's work in so many different ways. But yes, the New York Christian Times, and again, those who remember 4 years ago, we brought back the United Negro College Fund and hosted a telethon after the United Negro College Fund. Haven't had telethon in a long time. The Christian Times brought that back and hosted a telethon for United Negro College Fund on Fox 9 a couple of years ago. And just so much, we are certainly a strong partner and so committed to the work in Harlem with the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. We've done quite some work around education, around just the COVID-19 pandemic, and we brought in Rite Aid, and we were the one who negotiated with Pfizer and got them to organize with us these educational sessions and workshops so that our community can be informed. So we say oftentimes that the Christian Times is more than just a printed newspaper and a publication that you can also find online at nychristiantimes.com. The bigger commitment for us is really, I'm bothered and troubled by the weakness of media outlets that are Black owned and operated, particularly in the New York media. And as print publication began to lose their way a couple of years ago, as we deal with this surgence and resurgence of the internet movement, we struggle to stay alive because we really know that it is so important that the Black community have a voice, and we've been a voice and certainly committed with the more than 4,000 churches that we're distributed to around the New York area, and we're staying faithful to the mandate that the Lord has laid before us.
And one of the things which goes back to what we were saying before, I do know, based on our close relationship with Harlem, of course you're on the board of the chamber, is that if you want to get a message across, if you put it in the Christian Time, as you say, many of the people in the church will see that, which, and I also noticed that you have Dr. Pointer from HCCI as one of the speakers, which is another organization that has used the power of the church to build property and create opportunities, in Harlem and other locations. But give an idea of how the 2 days will go for the conference. What's kind of like a blueprint of what one might expect, so that they can know if they can't make 2 days, they can have an idea of which day that might be the most important for
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. Let me just start by saying that we will have this year a series of exhibitors, uh, just business exhibitors, as well as one of the things that I'm committed to, and we're doing. The fact that we're just days away from Black Friday, and I use that term loosely, and I put it in quotes. Certainly, it's a time when we, as consumers, and yes, Black people overconsume, and we outspend every other race of people in New York City. And certainly that is something that we want to work on and we want to turn around. So yes, we want to provide opportunities for Blacks in the retail space to be there, to be able to share their products and services. So that will be available, and we're certainly open to anyone who want to be a part of that. We kick this off with the first plenary. That's going to be just an exciting time. A lot of key leaders. I don't want to start naming names and leave anybody out.
Yeah, you get in trouble.
I'll let you name the names, Tony. Because I'll get in trouble.
No, I know better. I threw out a couple of them, but I know better. But there's
one.
If you go to your site, there is a flyer that has all of the people. I mean, people, and I have it on my phone, like Monique Yoba, who's now in real estate, is going to be there. Of course, George Frazier, and there's so many different.
Make sure you do not leave out my president, President Lloyd Williams, the president of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce,
right.
And just the host. And I think what's great about this is the goal is because we're looking for a regional revival. Economic revival among the Black community. We have identified chambers of commerce in the region. So the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey is at the table, and a number of other key chambers are at the table. The Greater Paterson Chamber of Commerce in Paterson, New Jersey is also at the table, along with the Greater Harlem Chamber and all of the other business organizations that are here. So we kick it off with that. Of course, the mayor will be speaking the first day in the morning, the mayor of the city of New York. The second day, it will be the mayor of Paterson, New Jersey, and a host of other leaders you mentioned, actor Malik Yoba, New York Undercover, and a host of others, Cool Runnings, and a host of other movies that he has actually starred in. And I'm just inspired by his work, what he's doing around economic development, around real estate development. One of the weak areas that I am committed to see more Black developed projects, more Black developers on the for-profit side, period. I'm just concerned that unfortunately you always find more Black not-for-profit developments,
right?
You find Black developers, and again, it's not unfortunate that we have quite a few not-for-profit developers like the Greater Harlem Chamber and our Housing Development Corp, like HCCI, and a number of others, and we salute them. But we certainly want to see the Black community strengthen our footprint as developers on the for-profit side, and develop not just affordable housing, but market rate housing, commercial developments, and across the landscape. So we're also having a panel that is called the Real Estate Developers Summit. And that summit is really about really facilitating this process, both on the faith-based development side, the for-profit development side, and the not-for-profit development side. And of course, throughout the day, we're going to talk about how to become woman, minority, minority women business certified. So there'll be professionals from the city, the state, that will be sharing information around that. The federal government through the Department of Small Business Administration will be in attendance and sharing information and resources as well. So it's going to be power packed, and we're going to wrap this up on day 2 with this powerful presentation around linking Africa and the Americas around economic development. That's why we have some of these business people we have the president of a school, and this is a story that is such a powerful story. He flies in 3 days, and he started a school about 12 years ago. Now he runs one of the largest for-profit universities in Abidjan.
Wow.
Guess where he got his start? About 18 years ago, the then president of the Ivory Coast invited me to speak at a series of conference. And when I went to speak, they hired this young man out of college to be my interpreter. So he spent a week with me and interpreted for me for the time I was there. And he got so motivated that he decided he was going to start a school. Now he operates 4 schools across the country of the Ivory Coast, and he's coming in to speak at the conference as well. So, I'm just excited about some of these initiatives and what the Lord has been doing through our work over the years.
Well, again, and could you give listeners, especially those in the New York State, tri-state, because we have listeners throughout national and international, but for those who are in this area who may not know where the Brooklyn Navy Yard may be and how to get there, could you give some direction? Well,
Absolutely. The first thing I want to say about the Brooklyn Navy Yard is it's almost like you're in Lower Manhattan. So everybody needs to know that it's extremely central. It's not deep into town or anything. Once you come over the Manhattan Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge, you are 2 minutes, 3 minutes away from the Navy Yard. That's how strategic the Navy Yard is. So it's downtown Brooklyn. It's right literally on the Harlem River, which means, and by the way, my office is in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. That high-rise building is where the Christian Times office is. And
I remember you had an event when it opened.
Yeah, absolutely. Most times I take the ferry to my office if I'm in Manhattan, and I take the ferry to Manhattan. So you literally gets off the ferry into the Brooklyn Navy Yard. That's so easy. And
okay. So you can go down to the South Streets to the ferry.
Absolutely. You could take the ferry from by Grayson Mansion at 96th Street. You can take the ferry 34th Street, Wall Street. If you're on the west side, you take the ferry to Wall Street and switch, and then you can take the ferry to the Navy Yard. So I'm just giving you one way.
And most of the subways stop there too. Many of the subways stop closer to there. I think that
on the subway side, on the Brooklyn side, again, you come to so many stops. Again, if you do come to the Atlantic Terminal stop, another secret for everyone, the Brooklyn Navy Yard provides free ferry service that takes you into the Navy Yard from Atlantic Terminal. So it's very easy to get to. We're right there central downtown Brooklyn. We're in building 303. We have the entire floor. It is a great space for conferences, and hopefully we will utilize every inch of that space as we really come together and talk about this resurgence movement.
What about parking? Is there places where people, if they plan to drive, since it's so close, are there any recommendations?
Yes, there's a parking lot that's below where the conference is. Again, there's a fee for that parking,
right.
But there's a parking lot that's right there in the premises. on the premises. For those who want to utilize that, you may see a sign that say Wegman, because Wegman supermarket is right next door, and certainly the lot may say Wegman, but certainly that's there. And again, wherever you can find parking in the area, everybody know that parking in much of New York City is quite a challenge,
The
and
ferry probably is a lot better to
normally
get.
comes at a premium.
But again, it's always good to talk with you. You do so much. Can you give the listeners what you would like to have happen? What's your goals and objectives as it relates to looking back and be happy that you were able to succeed? What do you see success in?
I love that question, and it's a question for which we have very specific answers. Number one, our goal and commitment. The reason why the conference, by the way, is called, again, the website is resurgence2022.com. But again, the conference is called Resurgence 2023. And that is because we want to look ahead. We don't want this to really come across so much as an event, as we want it to be a process and a movement. So our goal is, and that's why we're bringing together so many lenders, conventional and non-conventional lenders. There's what we call, and this is a federal designations, CDFIs, and CDFIs are really lenders that are certified by the SBA to give smaller loans that does not necessarily meet all of your conventional criteria. Our goal is we want to get 50 people, 50 businesses who can get loans of $50,000 and below. We would probably call those microloans. Our goal is 50,000. Again, another 50 people getting loans from 50,000 and above. We have goals as to how many people want to see become NWBE certified, start the process, then journey through that certification process. We have goals as to how many people we want to see move into a place of negotiations around specific areas and specific things like, can I get a 7-Eleven franchise or a Yum Brand franchise? And for those who don't know, Yum Brand own and operates KFC and Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and a number of others. Again, where do we start negotiating for some, GMC dealerships or GM dealerships to come back into our market, and all of the other car manufacturers as well. So these are just really some of the specific things. We want to walk away knowing at the end of the day, Tony, that our people are better educated, better equipped. Those who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, that they get the information that they need and can probably more intelligently, more sophisticatedly, probably from a better place, start their business without the pitfalls and the disadvantages that many of us who have gone before have struggled through or have had to deal with. Right. Those are just some of the areas that are really, really committed to us going into this conference. And in the end, we want to make sure that everybody who come in walk away with some new contacts, some new resources. I'm going to reach out to this one about employment or about job creation. I'm going to walk away with this one. How many people get contracts from government? Mm-hmm. We have numbers around that. How many can begin to look at, I want to begin to talk to TD Bank or JP Morgan Chase, who will be at the conference, or MTA and others, or the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, who will also be at the conference, to talk to them about, we want to do business with you and we want to begin that process. So, for us, at the end of the day, the fact, Tony, that the 2022 Book of List, and the Book of List is an annual publication put out by Crane's New York Business. They do it once a year. and they list all the top businesses in New York in almost every category. The privately held, top, 500, the Fortune 500, Fortune 100. The list goes on. And they also list the measly 25 top minority-owned firms in the New York market. And the 2022 book of list had 0 Black-owned business on it. Wow. And 15 years ago, when we were doing this, the Christian Times been really following these numbers and publishing these numbers. There were 11 Black-owned businesses, 12, 13 on that list. Now there is 0 Black-owned business on the list of the top 25 Crain's New York book of lists, listing the 25 top minority-owned firms. That's a problem. And there has to be a greater commitment on our part to turn these numbers around and to change the situation.
Especially since we are consumers like no one else. I also see that you have
31 cents on every dollar spent in New York. So just think about that. Of every consumer dollar spent in New York, Black people are responsible for a minimum of 31 cents.
Wow. That's why when we talk about the diaspora and awakening the diaspora, that's why there's so much money if it could be put into a certain type of focus, similar to what you're talking about. There's so many things that not only can be done here, but investments, abroad. So the conference again, November the 17th and the 18th. Oh, and I was going to say Reuben McDaniels, who's the president of DASNY, is really one of the key figures when the state's legal cannabis program comes about. So that's another business opportunity that we have to start looking at. And I know from our meetings, as you know, Reuben McDaniels has kind of been one of the voices to begin to give people information and understanding as to when this happens, how it should happen. And just like NWBEs, we don't want the people who were victimized the most not be able to take advantage of the economic development opportunities that will come in. That, we don't want that to happen. You saw what happened with Lotto. We want to begin to get that type of information as relates to an entrepreneur opportunity that's going to be worth billions of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been too many missed opportunities. The internet.com industry, we missed that. The green economy, we've missed that for the most part. I agree with you. One of the big sessions that we're having at the conference is really about cannabis and looking at the diverse opportunities that are available there. It's not just about planting. It's not just packaging, transportation, legal services, marketing. And so there are tons. And the fact that the governor of the state of New York has committed $200 million to, and the idea that we want to make sure that enough of those resources are going to Black-owned businesses, that's key. So it is so key, to your point, Tony, that everybody make an effort to make their way to this conference, to come out and to be a part of what's happening. That is key, and that's important. And again, we encourage everybody to make their way to the conference. And
the starting time on both days is
9:30. It's 9:35 both days. Yes.
Uh-huh. And again, Reverend Dillon, I can't express my gratitude for you to spend some time with us, because I know with all of the things that you're doing as it relates to, this is the old joke on, I think it was one of the TV shows where they say, I'm not Jamaican, but I got a lot of jobs. I know you have a lot a lot of jobs, a publisher, a preacher, you have a church, and you have so much stuff to do. But for you to take time to let people know how important it is, these dates, and again, you can register online. Uh, and we didn't talk enough about, you touched on it, the exhibits. Even if you can't hear people talk, you might say, I don't want to hear people. If you talk to the exhibitors, they can help you obtain different things such as employment opportunities and the like. And these are the things that, as I said at the beginning of the show, it is bad that we do not have what we deserve based on our abilities and what we contribute in taxes to the state of New York. It's worse, however, to not be able to know that there are opportunities out there that we can take advantage of and not be able to hear it, which is why Soul City, Christian Times, Harlem Community, all of the Black media should be supported, because if it's not us, and we should not expect anyone else to do what we're doing, because it's us.
That is literally asking somebody else to speak for you, and without giving them what to say, giving them an opportunity to interpret, to shape the information that they think you want to say, and to communicate it for you. So we can't stress more, Tony, how important Black media is, what Soul City, yourself, this Urbanology show, all of the outlets that we have in our community, all of the newspaper, it's Harlem News, it's the Harlem News Group, all of the publications associated, it's Positive Community, it's Carib News, it is all of the outlets that we own and operate, the Amsterdam, you name it. We have to thrust and move Black media to another place. And we were trying hard to incorporate a forum on Black media in this particular session. Didn't accomplish it, but we definitely want to address that. In fact, one of the deputy commissioners in Department of Small Business Services in the city of New York have already asked me to work with her to convene a conversation around Black media, and we'll certainly pick that up in another couple of weeks and see how we move that forward. So it's such a pleasure always talking to you, Tony, inspired by your work, your leadership, certainly all that you have done, all that you're doing. And again, we look forward to everybody finding a way, making your way, coming to this conference, and let's be a collective voice around this revival, this resurgence movement that I believe is so important to us in our community. And now that we have a mayor that we have worked so hard to put in place, is that window that we must utilize to ensure that we see some positive transformational changes. And I can't stress more that if these changes do not have what I call a spiritual foundation and built on economic walls, it is bound to fail.
And one of the things how I'm going to end this is that many people don't go out to vote for whatever the reasons are. And I know for a fact that, of course, voting is not the end all. However, if you do not vote, there are things that you cannot get as relates to what is necessary to do many of the things that we're talking about. And what I would encourage everyone to do, if you have not gone out, people have died, people have given up their freedom just to be able to go in and vote. So you might think that it doesn't mean anything. There have been elections that have been won on 1 or 2 votes. So we do want to, I can't tell you how to vote, but I can say that listen very clearly on people who are talking to you as it relates to what you think that you deserve or should have. And those are the people that you should try to support. Reverend Dillon, thank you so much on this powerful day to talk about what's coming up. And matter of fact, the discussion at the 17th and 18th will be what we're going to do, because the elections will be over. So it may be a planning, we have to come together to strategize what is going to look like in 2023. So that is even more of an important reason to come out there, because this will be one of the first gathering of so many people in the civic, in the political, in the business arena to begin to say, okay. So thank you so much. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, with Reverend Dennis Dillon, talking about the Resurgence Conference that's coming up, Resurgence 2022. I'd like to thank you again. I'd like to thank Soul City for providing the platform to allow for people to understand the work that is taking place in New York, in Harlem, and Harlem reflects the Harlems of the world. Harlem is just a state of mind. So thanks again. Please, if you have not voted, come out and do vote. Remember to flip the ballot, because there's information about justice for those who have been mistreated in the judicial system. There's information about clean air, clean water that you need to support. And thank you. It's about time for me to say so long, and I appreciate you, Reverend. We'll be talking to you soon, and we'll seeing you even sooner at Take care. All right, then. And that brings us to the end of our show today. I again urge you to support Soul City, Harlem Community News, Christian Times, Positively New York, Amsterdam News, Carib News. Those are the papers that allow for us to speak to you and give you information that you might not get from others. But that's our responsibility to do that. So until next week, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we hope to see you again. Matt McCoy, Jasmine Pfeiffer, all of the Soul City team, thank you for your help. Take care. Bye.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Urbanology.